USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
From Touchstone Pictures, in 1965, DJ Adrian Cronauer was sent to Vietnam. He immediately broke all the rules.
Yeah! He's disobeyed orders.
I'll get you, my pretty!
He's read unofficial news.
Big dogs landing on my face!
What's he going to be like when he's 10 times as popular?
But even though he made waves, he made a difference to everyone around him.
Surprise!
Robin Williams, Good Morning Vietnam.
Too much?
Rated R.
Starts Friday in a theater near you. Check newspapers for showtime.
By December of 1987, Robin Williams had established himself as a prominent figure on television with his role in Mork Mindy and in films such as Robert Altman's Popeye. However, this particular 80s flick marked his first significant dramatic role, showcasing that he could deliver more than just his high-energy comedic style. The movie is loosely based on the real-life story of Armed Forces radio disc jockey Adrian Cronauer, who often frustrated his superiors by playing rock music and displaying a bold sense of humor on air. Set in 1965, the film depicts the U.S. Armed Forces' subtle escalation of the Vietnam conflict as tensions began to rise. It became one of the top films of 1987 and earned Williams his first Oscar nomination. So jump in the military Jeep, crank up the Armed Forces radio station, and don't forget to flip them the bird as Nicholas Pepin, Chad Sheppard, and I discuss Good Morning Vietnam from 1987 on this episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. All right, welcome in 80s Flick Flashback fans. I am Tim Williams, the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. So excited to have you with us today. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And we want to hear from you, so connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. If you're feeling generous, please support the podcast at buymeacoffee.com. And please visit 80sflickflashback.com and our TeePublic store for some awesome 80s Flick Flashback merch and original designs. We've got a double dose of awesome joining us on the 80s Flick Flashback episode this time. First up, he's a man who knows a good story when he hears one, and he's definitely not broadcasting from Saigon. Please give a warm welcome to the fantastic Nicholas Pepin from Pop Culture Roulette. How you doing, Nicholas?
It's all right. Yeah, Wisconsin, definitely not Saigon.
Big cultural difference there. And rounding out our dynamic duo, he's ready to tell it like it is with no censors needed. Get ready to salute the insightful Chad Sheppard. How you doing, Chad?
Doing good.
Glad to have you both. So, Good Morning Vietnam. I will go ahead and say it. This is one of my favorite Robin Williams movies. It's not my top favorite, but it's definitely one of my favorites. And I have a lot of nostalgia for this one. So it's going to be fun to talk about. Let's jump right in. Nicholas, when did you see Good Morning Vietnam for the very first time?
I guarantee you that we rented it. I would have been too young to be going to see it in the theaters, but my dad being a Vietnam vet and being a giant Robin Williams fan, there's not a chance that we didn't rent this movie when it came out. So I guarantee you I saw it for the first time, probably in 88.
Yeah. What about you, Chad?
The first time I've seen bits and pieces of this movie for probably since 87, but my recollection of seeing the entire movie in its entirety. Well, it wasn't in entirety. It was on television.
Okay.
Like, it was either it's two possibilities. Either it was we were on a vacation in Florida and we had to stay in the hotel room, so we just watched a movie instead. Or it was when my dad was in service during the Desert Storm. He got sent to Valdosta because the chaplain there got sent to Desert Storm. I saw it down there, but I saw it in its entirety in a hotel room. It was on TV, so I saw the edited version. But
gotcha.
Yes, I remember seeing it. One of my favorite Robin Williams movies too. I've had the CD longer than I've had the movie.
Oh, the soundtrack. I had the soundtrack.
Yes.
Yeah, I had the soundtrack on cassette, and then I think I had the CD later. But yeah, that was It's funny because if you don't know, the soundtrack has a lot of snippets of Robin Williams, like as Adrian Cronauer in between certain songs. So there's a lot, like when I watch the movie again, like I know certain segments like by heart just because I listened to it so many times on the soundtrack. I saw this. I was thinking earlier today, I was like, I have a very vague memory, I think, of seeing it in the theater. If I did, it was like I went and saw it with my dad because we typically saw I don't think we saw a lot of Vietnam movies, but we usually went to movies together. And we were both, I was a huge Robin Williams fan from Mork and Mindy. I was a big fan of that show. And I hadn't really I'd seen Popeye, but I don't think I'd seen many of his other 80s movies before then that I can remember. I remember seeing it, but I remember when we first bought a VCR, which was probably late 1988, we were on base at Fort Meade, and we bought the VCR on base, and they had the VHS movies you could buy. And I was like, we bought a VCR, we need to buy some movies. And the first two movies we bought, and I may have mentioned this before, was Lethal Weapon and Good Morning Vietnam. So I watched those two movies over and over and over and over and over again. So I knew those movies backwards and forwards from being the first two VHS movies that we owned. Of course, we would still rent stuff like every weekend, but those were the first VHS tapes that I remember us purchasing. So I have, once again, very fond, nostalgic memories of this movie. So when did you last see it before rewatching it for the podcast, Nicholas?
It's not a movie that I watch all that often. So it's been a while. I can't tell you exactly when, but it's, I probably caught it on TV, but because it's one of, obviously since he was nominated for an Oscar, it's one of Robin Williams' best roles, but it's not one that I want to revisit all that often. It's a little bit, it's not quite, Miss Doubtfire or
right.
Aladdin or even,
Yeah, it definitely gets heavy towards the end. Like it becomes a heavier movie on the back half of it. And we'll get to it. But what about you, Chad? When was the last time you watched it?
Gosh, it's been a long time. It wasn't that showing that I saw it in Florida or wherever I was, because I've seen it since then. But I can't even remember. So like I'd forgotten I signed up for this episode actually. But
I had a feeling when you guys said, "What movie are we doing again?"
So which movie is that? Yeah,
right.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. No, hey, at least you had time to watch it. Could have been the day of.
Yeah, I looked for streaming.
Nope.
I had to go to my dad's house to go get my DVD. And if you could see me on camera, which you can't because my camera's not working, I would show you the DVD cover that I have. So
I actually got it on Blu-ray maybe just a couple of months ago because I knew we were going to do the episode. I knew we was going to do it this year. And I think at that time I was looking for it on streaming and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I was like, let me go ahead and get the DVD or the Blu-ray so I'll have it. And because he was one, I was like, I know I'm going to watch it again. It's going to be one that I'm going to watch, more than once for the podcast. But I think it was probably been 10 years ago now. My friend Ron, who has been on the podcast before, he had never seen it. And I've kind of picked this up from him, like usually on like a Memorial Day or July 4th, like a patriotic holiday. He'll want to watch a military or like a war movie that he's not seen before. And so he was like, I've never seen Good Morning Vietnam. Have you seen it? I was like, yes, I've seen it many times. And so we watched it on I think it was like a Memorial Day. We were both home from work and I came over and we watched it. That was his first time watching it. So I think that was the last time I watched it all the way through. And even watching it then, I was like, I remembered all the funny stuff because once again, listening to the soundtrack over and over and over again, that's what you mainly hear is the funny stuff. So when it got to the back half where it got much more serious, I was like, man, I kind of forgot how much drama is in the movie rewatching it again. So.
Yeah, because all the more important parts that they show, and of course they put it in the soundtrack too, are his his radio checks, so,
right?
His openings and his closings and in between songs and stuff. So, you forget that there's a whole drama between him and the friend that he gets, and his sister that he likes, and
right. We kind of talked about the Vietnam movies, and I thought about this earlier, and I've just pulled it up. I was like, of course, the 80s was like the height of Vietnam movies, and so this, of course, was one of them. And it kind of got kicked off like really like middle. I don't want to say Rambo kicked it off, but First Blood and Rambo were probably one of the first ones. In the 80s, of course, you're coming out of the 70s. You had like The Deer Hunter and Apocalypse Now, but in the 80s. Some of the biggest ones that people know about or remember is Full Metal Jacket from 87, Platoon in 86, Hamburger Hill in 87 that I remember watching, Born on the 4th of July in 89. I always forget that's an 80s movie. I was looking about that in the 90s. The Killing Fields in 84, Casualties of War in 89, Uncommon Valor in 83. So that's just a handful. But there were so many. Of course, you got, Missing in Action, which are a little, more action-y than really about the war itself. And so, and there was a show on the time called Tour of Duty that I was a big fan of watching. So,
and the A-Team.
And the A-Team, yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
I forget, you kind of forget until you go. I'm watching that. That's where they're kind of like, that's how they got together was in Vietnam. So I remember watching this movie as a kid, and of course, being a huge Robin Williams fan. Of course, I was drawn to the comedy, but watching it now as an adult and knowing more of the history of Vietnam and knowing more about, the conflict and everything, more of the backstory of what was happening around at that time, it really puts it in a different perspective. And so it gets a little rough towards the end. But I always say that, but at the same time, you go back and watch movies like Platoon and Full Metal Jacket, and this is a very light Vietnam movie. Like it's not as violent, of course, or as graphic as those movies are, but it has its moments in this one too.
Without having done any research on that side of it, it's rare, or it was rare at the time, to have a comedy about war.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's a little bit more common now.
Oh yeah.
But then like it was, and I know and I'm sure it's in your notes somewhere that it was one of the things that people were a little reluctant to even do the movie because they're like, why would we let Robin Williams do a war movie?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And even on the Blu-ray that I have, it's like one of the little, like little critic things, like one of the best war comedies since MASH. I'm like, it might be the only war comedy since MASH when this came out. So they did somewhat have, they knew that it could be done from that. And I honestly, I don't think I've ever seen the movie MASH. I've seen the TV show, of course, because it was on all the time as a kid, but I don't think I've ever watched all of the movie version of MASH all the way through. So
it's every bit as hard to watch as the TV show.
Or maybe even more so.
Right. Yeah.
They say comedy. I remember laughing out loud.
There's definitely funny parts, but like,
yeah. I was gonna say, I think the movie is definitely more dramatic than funny. Where I think they lean more on the funny side on the TV show.
Yes.
But hey, they made Hogan's Heroes was a comedy, and it was about prisoners in a Nazi camp. So
yeah, that's a whole nother podcast in of itself.
Right. We're not gonna go that. We're not gonna dive into that one, but yeah. So. All right, well, let's jump into story origin and pre-production. We kind of talked a little bit about some of the setbacks, but I did find some interesting things here. But as I mentioned in the intro, it is based on a real-life person, Adrian Cronauer, who in 1979 actually pitched a sitcom based on his experiences as an American Forces radio DJ. Although one of the most popular television programs of the era was the Korean War period piece MASH, the networks were not interested because they did not see war as comedy material. Cronauer revamped his sitcom into a script for a TV movie of the week, which eventually got the attention of Robin Williams. Very little of Cronauer's original treatment remained after writer Mitch Markowitz was brought in. And so I found an article where Mitch Markowitz talks about, getting the job. And so this is quoted from him. He said, "My path to getting to write Good Morning Vietnam began with Norman Lear. He was actually a TV script writer. He said, one summer around 84, 85, I was in Vermont and I'd heard that Norman Lear was vacationing near a place that I was staying. I'd worked on a show he produced and had met him a couple of times, so I called him up and we got together. He asked what I'd been doing, and I told him I'd written a couple of spec scripts. One of them eventually became a movie called Crazy People. Norman liked the script, and he said he had a deal with a producer who was Robin Williams' manager, and he recommended that I meet with him. When I did, he pitched me an idea for a buddy comedy about Hollywood hair designers, which I spent a couple of weeks on. But then when I came back to pitch it to him, he could tell I wasn't very enthusiastic about it. I admitted that I didn't understand it, and it seemed for a second like I was going to give up my first job writing a movie. But as I stood up to walk out of the office, he said, well, I've got something else. He told me about this movie about a guy named Adrian Cronauer who had a radio show in Vietnam in the 60s before things heated up in the Vietnam War. There wasn't a treatment or anything. It was just a one-line description. I was interested, though, and I was hired to write it soon afterwards. He then says, I met the real Adrian Cronauer once, maybe twice. Honestly, he wasn't interesting to me. He was a nice man, but he was very square, a nerdy type guy. I listened to some of his tapes of his show too, but they weren't very humorous or inspiring either. So I just went off and did my own thing, which makes sense because if you read any of the, there's a lot of stories out there, like interviews with Adrian Cronauer, and he'll talk about how much the movie is not really his life at all or his experience in Vietnam. But yeah, I think I've seen a couple of interviews and he's not very charismatic at all. So
does it seem to you, or it does to me, that maybe the real Adrian Cronauer, they based him with Bruno Kirby's character? the way that sounds.
Yeah.
Like he thought he was funny.
Right.
But kind of wasn't. So
I didn't see anything that said that, but that seems likely.
Right. Like maybe that's why they wrote that character for Bruno.
Right.
Or had that character in the movie. So
The real life Cronauer said, I'm very happy with the movie. Of course, it was never intended to be an accurate point by point biography. It was intended to be a piece of entertainment, and Robin Williams was playing a character named Adrian Cronauer who shared a lot of my experiences, but actually he was just playing Robin Williams, which I think is fairly accurate. Williams stated that his portrayal of Cronauer in the film was only about 5% character and 95% of himself. Commenting on his portrayal in the film, Cronauer added, anybody who's been in the military will tell you that if I did half of the things in that movie, I'd still be in Leavenworth right now. A lot of Hollywood imagination went into the movie. I was a disc jockey in Vietnam, and I did teach English in my spare time. Cronauer said that the film misrepresented him to make him seem anti-war when he was, in his own words, anti-stupidity. In fact, Cronauer, who later became a lawyer and died in 2018, became an active Republican and was a vice chairman of the 2004 Bush-Cheney re-election campaign. None of the people in the film are based on actual people who Cronauer met, although he described them as stereotypes of military personnel who existed at the time. For the scenes in which Cronauer teaches his class to swear and use street slang, his pursuit of a Vietnamese woman, and his Jeep being blown up in the jungle, among others, are constructs for the plot and never happened to Cronauer. He did, however, witness the bombing of a restaurant that he had only recently left and clashed with Army censors when prevented from reporting it. So that part was somewhat true.
I don't know if I saw Robin Williams' character as anti-war.
I don't either. Going back and watching it again, I was like, I didn't really feel that way about it.
Right. I don't really feel like he had an opinion of the war one way or the other. He just wanted to report the facts, and they wouldn't let him. Like, it wasn't like he was like, oh, down. It was just kind of, I could see the anti-stupidity thing. But,
exactly. Yeah.
I never saw this one as an anti-war movie like, Full Metal Jacket would have been. Or
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. According to Cronauer, he and Robin Williams were forbidden by Barry Levinson, the director, to meet each other because Levinson quote unquote, was afraid that if Robin and I met, that Robin would somehow start to do an unconscious imitation of me, which would change his characterization. They eventually met at the film's New York premiere.
Yeah, I feel more of his stuff especially on the air, where it was more like his stand up.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Stuff that you've seen on a stand up, and more than what a DJ. Being one myself.
Oh yeah.
I would. That's more of a stand up routine than anything.
And you had said that like they had massively changed the script from what Adrian Cronauer had written to what the other guy wrote. And then I don't know how much of what he wrote actually made it into the film, because Robin Williams kind of just did his own thing, at least in the radio bits. Yeah. Like the behind the scenes on the Blu-ray, Barry Levinson says he let Robin do a lot of improvisation, but there were certain beats that needed to be done. So they have scenes of him doing lines of jokes while he's on the air, but you can see he's reading from notes, certain things he's got to mention because it's time of that time, like the bits about Lyndon B. Johnson, the bits about the Queen of England, the Pope on a rope, those kind of things. There are other variations of those jokes that he goes through, but he's looking, you can see him looking at a piece of paper okay, I got to talk about this, talk about that, but he's still adding his own, comedic style and impressions to you tell, it's it feels like some of the jokes are kind of already written, just kind of small parts, and he's just taking that core of the joke and then elaborating on it. So it's kind of interesting to watch, because I was it seems so, in the movie, it just seems like it's so spur of the moment off the top of his head, but then watching that, it's there's a lot of other pieces that they didn't use because they were pulling the best of what what he did. So, which we talked about that in Dead Poet Society. I don't know if you were on that episode, but yeah, I was on that one episode.
Yeah, kind of the same thing where they let him roll, and you can tell where even in this one you can see some of the cuts where it's okay, he wasn't standing there at that point, or they almost have to make it a montage because you have to chop so much stuff up. You can't get it in one shot. So, and
I do wonder how much they cut of him teaching English, because I bet you, those scenes went on for way longer.
Yeah, the one guy, gosh, I don't know anybody's name.
Yeah.
The guy was yes, blah 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 blah. He seemed the most natural. He was just I don't think he was. To me, it didn't seem like he was actually acting.
The older guy that wanted to play baseball.
I think so.
Yeah,
he's the one. He's the one who would. Toward the end, he would ask him a question, and he was like, "No, I don't want to do that."
Yeah,
or something.
Yeah, or he was talking about. He's like, somebody comes up to you and they're trying to pick a fight with you. What are you going to do? I just take it. I'm not doing nothing, and they're all laughing or whatever.
Oh yes, that. And then Robin laughing at all of them, they were actually having a good time, and yeah. I did really like those scenes too.
Oh yeah. Some of it was how much of that was him really just teaching them things, how much of that was actually scripted, how much was he just totally riffing and they're just going, following along. But
the 80s Flick Flashback podcast will return after these messages.
What seems to be the problem, pal?
There's just so much pain in the world, so many issues. I don't think I can bear it.
Hell, friendo, it sounds like you could use a dose of pop culture roulette.
Pop culture roulette? What's that? Some sort of pop culture themed podcast or something?
That's right, sonny boy. When hope seems far, dive into some PCR.
But I already get my entertainment news from Variety.
Huh, that's pretty good. If you're a chucklehead, PCR gives you news you need, condensed, unfiltered, and raw, from three nerds who know a little something about something.
Wow, okay, sign me up.
That's the spirit. Pop Culture Roulette. New episodes every Monday, available on all major podcast directories.
Are you a fan of movies and TV shows inspired by comics? Ready for a podcast that dives deep into the thrilling world of adaptations? Well, look no further. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. This is your go-to podcast for all things comics on screen. I'm your host, Laramie Wells, and every Monday we explore the dynamic universe where ink meets action. We break down the classics, reveal hidden gems, and uncover the creative process behind your favorite adaptations. Subscribe to Moving Panels now on your favorite podcast platform and join us on this epic journey through the pages of comics and onto the big screen. Remember, new episodes drop every Monday. Don't miss out. Moving Panels, where every panel has a story and every adaptation is a blockbuster. Subscribe today, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Are your business expenses playing hide and seek? With Uber for Business, the small spends that slip through the cracks, like rides and meals, go right where you need them. Because it integrates with leading expense platforms, you can say goodbye to surprise costs, missing dollars, or chasing receipts. Everything's track downable. Uber for Business. Make small steps that make a big impact. Learn more at uber.com/small steps.
All right, well, let's jump into casting. So, of course, the late great Robin Williams. He received his first leading film role in Popeye in 1980. He was nominated for, he won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for Good Will Hunting in 97. His other Oscar-nominated film roles included this one, Dead Poet Society in 89, and The Fisher King in 91. We've done his filmography before. I won't recap it, but you know how great Robin Williams is. As Nicholas mentioned earlier, Touchstone Pictures, who are part of the Disney empire, considered the casting of Robin Williams a bit of a gamble during production, as he had yet to become an A-list actor and appeared in a string of commercial flops for other studios. Plus, he had well-publicized problems with alcohol and drugs in the past. The film would also feature a fair amount of profanity and rude humor, which worried the board, plus it had a fair-sized budget. It was thought that if the film failed badly at the box office, then Touchstone might either fold or go back to making family-friendly comedies like Splash. Fortunately, the film became a financial and critical hit and propelled Williams into a major name actor. That wasn't the part about they were concerned about it being a war comedy, but
it's funny to think of they thought of Splash as a family-friendly comedy.
Right.
Hey, go back and listen to that episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not as family-friendly as I remembered as a kid.
That is true. Absolutely.
Yeah. We've covered a few of those lately. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Yeah. All right, and then we've got Forrest Whitaker as Private Edward Garlick. After making his film debut in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, he went on to earn a reputation for intensive character study work for films such as Platoon in 86, Bird in 88, The Crying Game in 92, Phenomenon in 96, The Great Debaters in 2007, Panic Room in 2002, and Black Panther in 2018. So once again, Forrest Whitaker, another great actor. This is probably the first movie I was introduced to him, because I didn't see Fast Times at Ridgemont High until much later. So whenever I would see him again after this movie, I'd be like, oh, there's that guy from Good Morning Vietnam. I remembered him from that movie. So any thoughts on Forrest?
I mean, we've covered him on at least Fast Times.
Yeah. I think we covered him in Bloodsport too, because he has a bit part.
Oh yeah, that's true. Okay, yeah, so you and I have talked about him a couple times.
Yeah. Well covered already. One of my favorite characters, Bruno Kirby as Lieutenant Stephen Hawke. He's best known for his roles in City Slickers, When Harry Met Sally, The Godfather Part 2, The Freshman, Sleepers, and Donnie Brasco. Yeah, he was one of my favorite characters for sure. Lieutenant Steve, yes, Frenchie. Like that whole bit is terrible.
Yeah. I know in my heart I'm funny.
Yeah. Oh god.
No, you're not.
No. I love when he leans back. It's like, I think some apologies are in order, and they're like, they're all looking at him like, dude, that's so bad. It's so bad. Any thoughts? I mean, Bruno Kirby's awesome. I love City Slickers. I love When Harry Met Sally. Like everything he's been in, he's great. So I'm definitely a fan of Bruno Kirby for sure.
Yeah, I think this was my favorite Bruno Kirby role.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's tough because he's good. I mean, he's great in City Slickers. He's great in When Harry Met Sally as far as comedy movies. But yeah, the character he plays is just so funny.
It's like that total awkward humor, like Steve Carell in The Office or something like that. Mm-hmm. It had that cringe factor. That's more what I gathered from him. Very very cringy. I was like, oh gosh, this guy he doesn't know.
I love this whole bit about, why don't you guys ever salute me?
Yeah. I am a lieutenant.
Yeah. All right, and then we got Robert Wool as Sergeant Marty Lee Drywitz. Of course, we know him from Batman, Bull Durham. We've covered on the podcast already, so you can go back and listen to those episodes. But he's great in this too. Another one of my favorite roles for his. Like this one and Bull Durham are probably my two favorite with him. He's good in Batman too, but these are more iconic. I mean, these are more him being, but he stands out a little bit more in these two, I think.
But that laugh that he kept doing.
Yes. That's sucking in the air.
Gosh,
yeah.
That drove me nuts. Yeah.
And then J.T. Walsh, Sergeant Major Philip Dickerson. His many films include 10 Men in 87, A Few Good Men in 92, one of the best ever. Hoffa in 92, Nixon 95, Sling Blade in 96, Breakdown in 97, and Pleasantville in 98. But he is so good in this as the conniving Sergeant Major.
He's so mean.
Yeah.
He did it so good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's seemingly just for no reason. Like
yeah. They don't really give him any kind of backstory to kind of know why he's the way he is. But I love the line at the end when he gets reassigned to Guam. There's nothing going on in Guam. He's like, I always let you do stuff because I thought you were weird. Or he's like, and now I just realized you're just mean. It's just radio. Like that's just like a great I've covered for you a lot, but I realize you're just mean, and that's it. He was just a mean person. So yeah, I love it. And what was it? Forrest Whitaker says, the rumors he got shot in the butt, but nobody's been able to confirm it. Like why he's the way he is. Yeah.
When I saw him in Sling Blade, I immediately thought, oh, that's the guy from Good Morning Vietnam. I was like, I didn't like him in that. Well, I didn't like the character. Like he did a great job playing the character that I didn't like.
Yeah,
and he did the same for Sling Blade too. So
okay, yeah,
like good actor. Just he made me hate his character, and that's what he was. That was his job.
He has one of those he's more of that guy. I mean, he's because he doesn't necessarily play the same character in every movie, right? But he has he's kind of typecast. He definitely. He has a role and he tends to fit it. And I bet you he's like the complete opposite in real life.
Right.
Because that's just how it seems to be. But he's very good at being that guy or that kind of.
Yeah. Very stern, very straight laced kind of a character. That's just, because even in A Few Good Men, he's not necessarily bad. He's almost like the whistleblower kind of, but he's still very stoic and stern. He doesn't really show a lot of emotions, maybe is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And then another that guy who's been in a ton of stuff, Noble Willingham as General Taylor. He's been in more than 30 feature films, including Chinatown in 74, Grease Lightning in 1977, Norma Ray in 79, The Howling in 81, La Bamba in 87, City Slickers again in 91, The Last Boy Scout in 91. Let's see, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective in 94. So yeah, but he's great.
He was the owner, wasn't he? The owner of the Dolphins.
Yes. Yeah. But just that Texas drawl, that Southern drawl, is that's what's iconic about him. Every role he plays, just the way he talks is just iconic. But I love him as the bad guy in The Last Boy Scout. That's one of my favorite roles of his, just being the big baddie. So.
And this is not a 80s nor a flicks, but he was in Walker, Texas Ranger.
That's right. That's right.
That's what I remember him.
Yep. He fit that mold very well. Texas.
I'll never forget the line though. It's the episode where Haley Joe Osment was on there.
Yeah.
And then it's very, very popular meme now. It's where he's like, "Hey, little guy, how's it going? Walker told me I have AIDS." And he's like, "Well, pardon my French, but I'll be damned." And he's got that like you said, that Texas draw.
I just saw that clip a couple of days ago was on.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's a rant. It was I think Conan O'Brien was showing clips from Walker, Texas Ranger, and that was one they showed. So it was just
Conan used to have I know this is very off topic, but Conan used to have a handle next to his desk, and he said it was the Walker, Texas Ranger handle, and then every time he would pull it, they'd play a clip from Texas Ranger, and that clip was the biggest one ever. I got the most laughs and yeah. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's fine. So another that guy, Richard Edson. I would never know that's this guy's name, but that's Private Abersold, I guess the right-hand man to Lieutenant. Where'd he go?
Lieutenant Hawk.
Lieutenant Hawk, yeah, Lieutenant Hawk. But you've seen him in Ferris Bueller's Day Off as the parking garage attendant.
Mm-hmm.
Man at the newspaper stand in Desperately Seeking Susan. He was Richie in Howard the Duck, which I don't remember him at all in that one. He was an 8 Men Out. He also appeared in Platoon, Tougher Than Leather, Let It Ride. He was also in Do the Right Thing in '89. And he was in the Super Mario Brothers movie in 1993 as Spike, King Koopa's cousin.
He's definitely another one of those guys.
Yeah. Like I said, Richard Edson, I wouldn't be able to pull that name ever for him. So, and then the last one I have on the list, Richard Portnow as Dan the Man Levitan. He's been in several films and TV shows, including Barton Fink, Kindergarten Cop, Man of the House, Sister Act, Seven, The Spirit, Law Abiding Citizen, Hannah Montana, The Nanny, Underdogs, Boston Legal. He's another that guy, but I definitely remember him as like he too plays like I know he's like one of the henchmen in Sister Act, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Looking for what? I forgot that. I didn't realize it was him. Okay.
Yeah, I rewatched Sister Act back around Christmas, and I completely forgot that Harvey Keitel is in Sister Act. Like it's just like unexpected. Like, let me watch this fun comedy, and there's Harvey Keitel playing the gangster. And I'm like, that was interesting casting in 1991.
What a surprise! Harvey Keitel playing a gangster.
Yeah. In a comedy, though, a musical comedy at that. So he's got range. So I didn't mention the actors that played the brother and sister that are kind of main characters because they really didn't do anything else outside of this movie. Like they had a few small roles, but they were this was their kind of one and done film. But I thought the brother did really well. Like I thought he was really good in the movie.
I was kind of surprised to see that he didn't do more because he did such a good job.
Yeah. That last scene where, Adrian confronts him in the village or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
He's crying and telling the story about what happened to his family. Like, I was like, man, how did this kid not do anything after this movie? He was so good. So anybody else in the cast that I missed or want to talk about?
I like Jimmy, the owner of the restaurant.
Oh, yeah. Jimmy Wan.
Jimmy Wan.
Yeah. Another one that didn't really do much. I really thought he was like a Vietnamese actor. Like he had just such a presence of like being like that, I've been in movies kind of thing. But yeah, that is a funny character. His love for Walter Brennan.
Like I was saying before, a lot of the Vietnamese actors like him and the people in the classroom are just very natural. So like for them not to do anything else, maybe they did, and maybe they did in their own country or something like that. But I mean, they were all really good, I thought.
Yeah, because this was actually filmed in Thailand. They couldn't film in Vietnam, I guess, or too expensive. But they filmed in Thailand, so it might have been a lot of like Thailand actors there playing those roles. Yeah, there wasn't much on them. What I could find online for sure.
Well, according to Back to the Future 2, it was after 2015 you were able to go to Vietnam and film or go on vacation.
Forgot about that. Yeah, it's like I'm like, you're probably right. I just don't remember. It's been a minute.
No, there was just in Back to the Future 2, there was a big sign that said vacation Vietnam.
Right.
And that was a big deal because nobody went over there after the war. So sorry.
No, you're right. Because I mean, this is kind of somewhat off topic because you mentioned it in that interview with the screenwriter. He talked about how he wanted to go to Vietnam to write the script, but he wasn't able to because you couldn't go there at that time. Like you weren't allowed. Yeah. And he wasn't able to go until like 10 years or a couple of years after this movie came out. And he said when he went, it was kind of a letdown. He said because everybody walked, there were no cars. There was still like a lot of American military army tanks just there that were never removed. So it's like he's like it was really kind of depressing to see what Vietnam became after the conflict was over. So,
wow.
All right, let's talk iconic scenes. So if someone says Good Morning Vietnam, what's the first scene that pops in your head? I think it's the same one probably for all of us, but I'll let Chad go first.
Well, that's got to be all the actual radio scenes.
Mm-hmm. Or just him saying good morning, Vietnam, right?
Yeah, it seemed like it got more and more. He was like kind of like even the scene where Forrest Whitaker was like, hey guys, it's him, it's Adrian Cronauer,
right?
And like they're like, okay, do the thing, and he's like, no, come on, guys. And like he got kind of tired, but that first one, the first good morning and the whole like joke after joke after joke stand up that he was doing, that's the iconic scene.
And for you, Nicholas?
Yeah, I mean, I was struggling to find iconic scenes because, like, other than Good Morning Vietnam and the way he said it, like there wasn't like a lot of. And there's a lot of really good stuff in the movie, but there wasn't really just any like. I think that's just what people think of, just the way he says, good, he really breaks into it,
Yeah. I agree. Like, so I said iconic scene, like we're all going to say the same thing. It's his first time giving that, like first time on the radio, that first, opening scene of him saying Good Morning Vietnam for the first time. So let's talk about favorite scenes.
I really liked, well, we've kind of already had,
we talked about a few already. I think
we talked about most of him teaching English.
Yes,
I mean anytime or any of the radio scenes where he was just riffing and going into the and him being smart enough to like. I mean, granted, some of it was scripted, but just the way because I've seen enough of his stand up, some of the older stuff and some of the newer stuff. The in between to know that like some of those characters were already in there. Like the hairdresser character,
right.
Like so like that is just, it was him kind of doing a stand-up, but being able to work in all the historical accurate, but I really like that baseball scene at the end,
yes,
like, right before he was getting shipped out. Like it was just him kind of getting one last go with his students.
Yeah. Well, he made a promise because like the very first class, the guy was like, we want to play baseball. I want to play baseball. So I'm going to try to work it out. Like he kind of like brushed it off at the beginning, but he was like, I need to fit, like I said, he needs to bring finality or some closure to that class and for them to actually play baseball. And it wasn't on the behind the scenes, but I actually saw a TikTok video where they were interviewing, it might've been the script writer. I don't remember. I don't think it was Barry Levinson, but he was talking about that scene, the baseball scene. And he said that a lot of the class people were like they weren't all actors. They were like just regular people they had picked up to be in the movie. And so when it came to that scene, they literally were out of money, so they couldn't get any baseball equipment. And so somebody was like, what's the closest thing we can get? And they literally looked down the street and saw like a stand with all these like, round fruit. Is like, let's use that. And so that scene was kind of like thrown together. And even the scene where he comes up, the old guys come to like, it's not a big real baseball. It's too big. He's like, that wasn't scripted. That was the guy. Like, he just like, he thinks that he thought that like Robin Williams was the real English teacher. Like he was like, like having that conversation. You can see like watching it again. You can see Robin was like, I'm doing the best I can. We have no money. It's like, he's almost like he doesn't realize the camera's rolling. He's like, we got to finish this scene, man. I got to get on a plane or whatever. So it's such that. And I was to say, that is one of my favorite scenes. And like now knowing the story behind it makes it even better because it feels so natural.
I liked one of my favorites was the it's just a joke of when he was picked up at the airport. Him and Forrest Whitaker were driving, and he sees the Asian woman, and like, oh, there's my future wife. There's my love of my life.
Right.
And then he saw another one. Wow, how'd she go so fast?
Yeah,
it's just a different girl. That was hilarious. I did. You mentioned it earlier too when Lieutenant Hawk filled in. That was as awkward as it was still pretty funny. That was a good scene too. I guess being the radio guy, all my favorite scenes are the radio stuff.
Yeah, I mean, those are for sure highlights of the movie for sure.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. Like, but yeah, the first classroom scene of him teaching them, and then of course the one where he's teaching them all the slang words, and the one guy is like always behind everybody else and flip them the bird. So that always makes me laugh. But yeah, the baseball scene at the end is probably my all-time favorite scene. So you got some favorite lines and dialogue, ones that we can say on the podcast.
There's my favorite line in the movie. I don't know. Repeat.
Yeah, there's a few that I'm like, I can't say this on
my favorite line of the movie is there at the end when he goes, "You're the in most desperate need of a..."
The white man in most desperate need of service.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. There we go.
Services rendered.
That was that line, the way they delivered it, and then the tag when the
general says it in the
general says it again, just laughing to himself.
Yeah.
That good. I got funny.
Now that's funny.
Yeah. Gosh, one of my I probably can't say it because it's just and then the culture we live in. What is a protective something? It's somebody wearing comfortable shoes.
Oh, yeah.
So I deleted some of the choice words, but I love that joke until now, I guess. Because I would say that. I actually would tell some of my my lesbian friends that joke, and they're like, gosh. What? And I was like, it's from Good Morning Vietnam. Isn't that funny? And they're like, no, not really.
Probably not.
Not to me.
Right.
I was like, I thought it was funny.
Yeah. Different time.
Yeah.
There's always those cringy moments in the 80s movies we have to
exactly
from. So
it's not necessarily like a favorite line or a favorite, like scene, but like I think being an adult now, I really appreciated that they didn't force the relationship.
Yeah.
Right. They let it, like, he was trying to get with her, and he was courting her and going through that process. And then like they didn't like force the scene where like something had like they just kind of were like, oh well, we were never actually meant to be together, but let's just part, and like they basically just like kind of shook hands, like they didn't like it. Just I really appreciated that they didn't force a love story where it didn't really need to be past where it went. It just it made more sense.
Yeah, I agree.
No,
I agree, because it was like at the beginning, like, oh gosh, this is going to be another trope of typical movie, and then even that conversation where he was like, "Can we just be friends?" She's like, "No, I can't be friends with you." And it's like, but there's also scenes where they're with the family where like the family's like trying to present her to him, like, we want you to marry her and take her away and give her a better life. What way I took it from. But she was like, no, I'm not, but she was still standing strong, like, no, I'm not going to do that. Whether that's because she knew what her brother was doing, or if she felt the same way that her brother did, that American killed my family, so why would I want to marry one, or be in a relationship with one?
So many movies just fall into the trap of the forced love story. Just having a relationship that just kind of ran its course, like naturally, like and didn't really have a lot of the elements that get forced in there that a lot of other action movies or war movies do. For no reason.
Yeah, which I think makes the baseball scene even better. Because in any other movie, that would have been like the scene of him saying goodbye to her after they'd fallen in love or whatever and had this relationship they couldn't continue. And instead, like, she wasn't even at the game. Because of her, he met the class, and the class became like this extra family he had, or these friends that he made while he was there that he could connect to. And so that was almost a better relationship than just having a girlfriend relationship.
Yeah, she was barely in the end of the movie. Like he found her.
Right.
Just ask her, hey, where's your brother? When they found out about him being a part of the bombing and stuff. So.
And well, some of the lines I wrote down, my favorite joke that I most of these are jokes, but was, and I understood this better as I got older, but when him and Sergeant Major Dickerson are in one of their moments, and he calls him sir, he's like, sir, he's like, what does 3 up and 3 down mean to you, airman? End of an inning? And so it's like, and so, and the thing that my dad retired as a sergeant major. So when I would see his patch, I was like, 3 up and 3 down. I get the reference. And then I'll have to edit this one too. But one of my favorites is when Lieutenant Hawk and Dickerson are talking to General Taylor about reinstating Cronauer. Talked about him making fun of former VP Richard Nixon. And Stephen Hawke says, respectfully, sir, the former VP is a good man, a decent man. And he says, bull. I know Nixon personally. He lugs a trainload of crap behind him that could fertilize the Sinai. Why wouldn't buy an apple from that son of a, and I consider him a good, close personal friend. That is one of the best lines. It's just like, that is so funny. When Lieutenant Hawke is like, I guess, fussing at the airmen about, and then talking about the PC, the press conference, and Forrest Whitaker's like, he likes to say PC instead of press conference. And so while they're talking, and then Hawke goes, and if they do, and if they do, and then after that scene, when they all leave, you hear all the guys, and then you do, like they imitating, which I thought was hilarious. That's one of my favorites too. So that's what I got for my favorite lines. I got, of course, I have another one, but I'm saving that for the end. So hopefully I was hoping you guys wouldn't bring that one up. So I'll hit a few of these. The rest I'll put in the show notes for the sake of time. So twice in the film, Adrian is seen pulling out the Beatles' Help album from the station's collection, but no Beatles songs are ever heard on the soundtrack. No Beatles songs were played because at that time, the copyrights to their songs had not been released for use in movies or any other media outlet.
I did notice that. That's the Help album.
Yeah, Michael Jackson hadn't bought those rights just yet.
Right. He sold them to Nike first anyway. It was going to be more money.
Well, Paul told me to do it, so I did it.
Let's not speak ill of the late great Michael Jackson. Anyway, according to director Barry Levinson, the scene where Cronauer entertains a truckload of GIs during a traffic jam was written during principal photography. He realized there needed to be a scene where Cronauer connected with the troops face to face. Many of the extras portraying American soldiers in the scene were non-Americans who spoke no English, but Robin Williams' enthusiastic physical comedy still made them laugh.
That's hilarious. Like, they didn't get the joke, but he was just so enthusiastic about it. They laughed anyway.
Right.
That's all. That's talent.
I meant to go back and see if this is a true fact. So this will be my rumor fact of the show. After Adrian Cronauer left Armed Forces Radio, several disc jockeys would take over his show on Armed Forces Radio, opening the show with the famous line, "Good Morning, Vietnam." One of those disc jockeys would be none other than 22-year-old Pat Sajak, who did the show from 1968 to 1969. Somebody fact check and let me know if that's true or not. Send us an email.
I had read that as well, but I also did independently fact check it. So.
Yeah, it's like it seems like a cool story if it's true, but I didn't fact check it. So
the 80s Flick Flashback podcast will return after these messages.
What's up, dudes? I'm Jerry D of Totally Rad Christmas, the podcast that talks all things Christmas in the 80s. Toys, movies, specials, music, books, fashion, and fads.
If it was gnarly during Christmas in the 80s, he's got it covered. Wait, is there a lot of things to talk about for the 80s and Christmas?
Well, you got the movie giants like Christmas Vacation, Scrooged, and A Christmas Story. There are TV specials like Muppet Family Christmas, Claymation Christmas Celebration, and a Garfield Christmas special.
Plus classics shown every year.
You also jam out to Last Christmas, Do They Know It's Christmas, and Christmas in Hollis. But most of all, it was a time for the most bodacious, best-selling Christmas toys ever, like He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers,
and Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yes, them too. We cover them all, plus much more, including standard segments like Hap Hap Happiest Memory, Gag Me with the Spoon, The Other Half of the Battle,
and Chant with the Littles.
So tune in to Totally Rad Christmas everywhere you get your podcasts. Turn the clock back and dive into those warm and fuzzy memories.
Later, dudes.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
Finding a new job is stressful. But with Indeed, it doesn't have to be. Just fill out your Indeed profile with your skills, experience, and desired salary. The more you fill out, the better your matches will be. And hearing from hiring managers will be 2 times more likely. Relax. That's your Indeed profile sending opportunities your way. Indeed, the world can work better.
Let's jump into box office and start wrap this one up. Good Morning Vietnam had a limited release at just 4 theaters for Christmas of 1987, but opened nationwide on January 22nd, 1988. It landed at number 1 at the box office and remained in the top spot for 9 straight weeks.
Wow.
9 weeks in a row, it was number 1. It was one of the most successful films of 1987, becoming the 4th highest grossing film of the year.
And it didn't get a wide release until 88.
Right. Yeah.
But it won 87. That's wow.
Yeah, I thought that. I was like, I guess even if it releases in 87, they consider the full box office run.
Yeah.
Ranks it for 87. Because I think about we talked about before, like movies that come out in December, like how can you still be listed in the 87 even though most of your money was made in 88? But I guess it's based on the release date, not when it was taken out of the theaters.
All right.
That seems spurious at best.
Yeah. But yeah, it was for like 4 weeks, it was at 4 theaters. And then the week before the full wide release, it was like in 700 theaters, and it still made it to number 1 when that week. And then the following week, it was like over 1,000 theaters. So I used the 22nd was when it actually went to like 1,000 theaters. So almost a full month before it went wide. Thinking probably back then, it had to be released before 88 to be eligible for the Oscars for that award season, because it was in the 88 Oscars. So, all right, well, let's jump to the rewatchability and nostalgia meter. It's our new segment where we take a look at how well the 80s flick holds up today. It's our way of measuring how enjoyable a movie is for repeat viewings, along with the waves of nostalgia it brings. Here's how it works. It's a 1 to 10 scale. Any number between 1 and 10 will do, but there are a few parameters to help you decide, because I think this is the first time Chad's been on an episode with the rewatchability and nostalgia meter.
Mm-hmm.
So at the bottom of the meter, at number 1, you can say I saw it once and that was enough. Right in the middle at number 5 is a good rewatch every couple of years. And at the very top of the meter, the highly coveted 10 is a highly rewatchable and full of nostalgia film. So since it's Chad's first time, I'll let Nicholas go first so he can kind of think about it. But Nicholas, where does Good Morning Vietnam land for you on the rewatchability and nostalgia meter?
I have to put some caveats here.
I figured you would. Go for it.
Because I'm going to give it a 5.
Ooh. But I understand. Go ahead.
But that's not I'm not saying it's not a great movie. It's not one of Robin Williams' best. It's just not a movie that I'm going to sit down and rewatch all that often.
Right.
It's not a fun, it's not a fun rewatch. Like it's not like
the movie as a whole is not a fun
rewatch.
Yeah,
not a fun movie as a whole as a rewatch. I mean, it is better than a lot of other movies that I've definitely given higher scores to.
Mm-hmm.
I'll use one of the more recent episodes that I did with you, UHF. I gave that one I think I gave that one a 10.
You did?
Wow.
But that's because I can sit down and rewatch UHF like without having to pay attention to it, or without you guys apparently also have military fathers.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's getting closer to 80, and so him and I have spent some time talking about his time in Vietnam. We recently did the honor flight thing that
okay, yeah.
So my dad and I last summer went and toured the Vietnam War Memorial there in DC, and spent he finally opened up and told me a lot of stuff, so that there's a different tint to this movie now than there would have been. So this is not a movie that it's a very good movie. It's very, I understand why Robin Williams got nominated. I think I also understand why he didn't win that one.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know if I could just it's not like on a Saturday afternoon I'm going to be like, a movie I really want to watch.
Right.
Yeah. So that's
right.
So like I said, we're good. The two different scales that we, I've talked about on past episodes. There's the great movie scale, and then there's the rewatchable scale.
Yeah.
And you're asking me rewatchable, so I'm giving it a 5. If this was on the great movie scale, I'd probably be giving it an 8.5.
Yeah. And that's what the skill. That's why the meter was created by me, because it's nostalgia and rewatchability. How does it rank in that? Not where does it land with the critics as being a quote unquote perfect movie or a great movie. So
right.
All right, Chad, you're up. Where does it land for you?
I I think I'm gonna have to say this. To me, I'm right there with what Nicholas was saying and all that, but being in the radio business and kind of just like, hey, I want to go to work every day and be Robin Williams. I'm not.
Right.
I mean, but if I went to,
as long as you're not Lieutenant Hawk, I think you're okay.
I hope I'm not. I really hope I'm not. I don't claim. I'm funny. Let me on. I'm funny.
Right.
No. But being that and the great music that I liked in it, like a lot of the stuff that I grew up with, the oldies that were in it that I grew up with, I'm gonna have to say a 7.
Okay.
From mine.
Yeah.
And my dad was in Vietnam as well. He talks about some things, not a lot of stuff. I'm not sure exactly. I don't think anything crazy happened to him, but he has told me some interesting stories. But watching it for the radio aspect, and if you're just Robin Williams being Robin Williams, and like I said, doing his stand up, and pretty much, I have to say 7. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of close. I'm definitely closer to Chad than Nicholas on this one, but I think even though it's not highly rewatchable, like it's not one I'm going to want to watch every year. I'll probably watch it every couple of years, but the nostalgia factor is very high for me mainly because of the soundtrack, because I listened to that so much and heard the DJ bits that were on there. That's what I remember. And that's like watching it again, like being able to quote those things with him and knowing what he's going to say, it ranks pretty high, but it can't overlap the rewatchability because it's a rewatchability and nostalgia meter. So I'm going to give it like a 7.5. I was almost going to give it an 8, but I think because it's not one that I'm going to watch like as frequently, like, and this is good. I think I'm with you, Nicholas. This is a good one to put on like every 5 or 6 years, like every couple of years. It's good to rewatch because you haven't seen it in a while, but it's not one, like I said, because it gets heavy on that back end. It's not something I'm going to want to watch on a regular basis, but it does bring up a lot of nostalgia for me. That's enjoyable. So 7.5 for me. Well, listeners, where does it rate for you? Please let us know. Send us a message on Facebook, Instagram, not Twitter, on YouTube, or you can send us an email at info@80sflickflashback.com. I want to hear what you think about it and where it lands for you. So, all right, gentlemen, I think we've covered it. Anything else you want to add about Good Morning in Vietnam before we wrap it all the way up?
I think I've covered everything I want to cover.
I think so.
All right, good deal. Well, thank you both for joining. Nicholas, what you got coming up on the Pop Culture Roulette podcast for the end of May, going into Memorial Day weekend?
We don't tend to plan as far out as you do. We just kind of take things as it goes. So, I think because of the Mother's Day episode we just did, I'm probably going to be forced to do a Father's Day episode.
Okay. So that's going to be coming up in June.
That's going to be coming up in June.
Okay. Something to look forward to. I like it. And Chad, how are things in the radio world?
Very good. Station? Very good. I'm not sure if I've been on since, I don't know when the last time I was actually on one of your shows.
It's been a minute. I know you were doing afternoons.
Yeah. I just started doing afternoons about almost a year ago, the end of this month.
Yeah.
I've been there doing it a year, full afternoon. So
very cool.
Having a good time and still enjoying it.
Yeah. So if you're in the Georgia, south of Atlanta area near Jackson, that's where Chad is on the radio station. So you can plug the station if you want to.
It's WJGA 92.1 FM.
Yep. And it's in the afternoon. Yeah, and so it's all different types of music. Like it's not a specific type of radio station.
Yeah, it's our slogan is we play whatever we like.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. We also have, we have gospel programs that I used to do just on Saturdays, and we also have church programming. But during the week, it's it ranges from country to oldies to classic rock to all kinds of different
styles.
genres of music. Yeah,
cool. Something for everybody. I love
it. Exactly.
All right, gentlemen, thanks so much for being a part of the podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tim Williams for the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. Excuse me, sir. Seeing how the VP is such a VIP, shouldn't we keep the PC on the QT? Because if it leaks to the VC, we could all end up MIA, and then we'd be put on KP.
Yes.
I got it in one breath.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude.
We will run, where every day is just pure fun. Goonies never say die, they remind. In those films we lose our mind. John Hughes and all his teen dreams, montages and synthwave themes. In Ferris hands, the city bends, living a life like it never ends.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.